USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to USCHO's Game of the Week podcast for Thursday, February 18th, 2021. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Jim Connelly. And Jim, one of the big games this week pits two Hockey East rivals, number 11 BU home and home with the University of Connecticut.
And joining us to preview this week's Game of the Week, the head coach of Boston University, and that's Albie O'Connell. Albie, first off, welcome, but you're coming in pretty hot team. You had a good weekend last weekend in Vermont, and the weekend before you knocked off number one Boston College. What are you thinking about this team so far? I know it feels like a small sample size. You've only played 10 games and we're in February, but what do you like about this team?
Well, I think they're highly competitive. I think as a group, as a whole, in the cage, on the back end and up front, it's a pretty competitive group. So we skate pretty well, and they've played pretty good team defense. Maybe not the first night. Just the first weekend was a little bit difficult, just being off so long and then just starting like way later. But since then, they've got a commitment to each other, and and a commitment to winning. They're worried about the 2 points or 3 points at the end of the game rather than scoring. So it's been good in that regard.
Yeah, well, you mentioned your back end. Let's start there in goal. You had a goaltender who was highly touted in Drew Commesso. Did not go to World Juniors for you because of some contact tracing or whatever it was that kept him out of World Juniors. But he started the season with you, was playing very well. Now he's sidelined. You got a kid named Vinny Duplessis, a freshman, coming in, stepping in. He ends up playing his first game against the number one team in the country. I believe he made 40 saves or 39 or 40 saves that night. He's 3-0. He's got a .66 goals against average and a .974 save percentage. I guess coaches always have high hopes for their recruits, but did you have even an inkling that his numbers could be this good right out of the gate?
Well, no, it's anyone to have those numbers is staggering, no matter if you're a senior, freshman, whatever be the case. So anyone to have those numbers, it's not necessarily expected. But he's a highly confident kid. He's very athletic. He's a very good skater, and he's played a lot of junior. He's played a lot of hockey in his life. He's very confident in his ability, and that was evident, from talking to him. From recruiting and then till now, and just seeing him on the ice daily and like meetings and whatnot, he's just very confident in what he can do, and he's got he understands what his game is and what he needs to do to be successful, and it's translated really well.
It's always a difficult question when you have kind of an established number one. They are, they have to step aside for health reasons. Then you put in somebody else. When that number one comes back, how do you feel that might change your approach? Will it change your approach to how you handle your goaltenders when Comesso's healthy?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think we're going to play the guy that gives us the best opportunity to win. That's all I can say. And if Friday night works out well, where Vinny plays really well, then he would play Saturday. So and so on. So I think we're basically right now just as a group trying to get better and really just worried about the next game because we don't have that many left. So we just every minute, every moment, every point counts. So we're just really focused on the one game. So to predict the future would be very hard when a guy might not be available or available.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a good luxury to have. Looking at your front end or the guys in front of your goaltender, I see a lot of great youth. You see, I'm looking at your top 5 point getters. Right now, you have 3 sophomores and a freshman mixed in that group. I know you recruit and you have some beliefs when you're recruiting these guys. What did you know you had in some of your underclassmen, your freshmen and sophomore this season?
Well, no, we've got a good mixture. We've got a good mixture of speed. We got some size and strength. We've got guys that can score, guys that can make plays. The one common thread between all of them, they're good skaters, and they all have pretty decent size. So I think we're pretty pretty happy with what they've done so far. Obviously, when we had all the seniors down, with Cockrell was out, Witkowski was out, Ferentz was out. So, and then it was basically just all freshmen, sophomores, couple juniors, and a grad transfer playing. So it was definitely a good glimpse into the future. And then guys have stepped up from there. So up front, those guys have played well. They've earned the minutes they've gotten. They haven't been given it right away, and they've kind of earned their stripes. And it's great to see, and just the development of each guy.
You mentioned him already, David Ferentz. He started out so hot, 14 points in 6 games. And those are some incredible numbers, especially for a defenseman, 4 goals and 10 assists. He's been on the shelf. How have you had players step up, at the defensive position? But, it's also a unique position when you have a skating defenseman that you have to replace.
Well, I think the guys have done a good job of it. You look at Vlasic, and all of a sudden he's got 3 goals, and had a game tire and a game winner. In BC in the game after, so he's really stepped up. McCarthy and Fensor have really stepped up, especially from the power play perspective. I think everyone knows Dave is an elite defenseman, and he's really deadly on the power play. So I think those guys, especially Vlas, and being a shooting threat out there, he's done a good job of, he was on the second unit there, but there's really no 1 or 2 unit right now, with the guys that we have. Obviously, when Dave's out there, he's usually on that unit, becomes number 1, but, it's been a little bit more competitive with both units going now. So I think all the D have stepped up in general, but Vlasic in particular has really taken his game to another level over the last 3 or 4 games here.
We're talking with BU head coach Albie O'Connell. With the delay in getting started playing this season and COVID delays in between, how have you been able to keep mindsets good and keep the team focused on what has to go on the ice?
I think the biggest thing was our upperclassmen, with Logan Cockrell, Ty Monte, David Ferentz, Jake Witkowski, and Koff coming in down from Vermont. Those guys have kept everyone loose and flexible and kind of elastic at times, because very easily guys could have got, and I'm sure there was some frustration, but they kept it positive. With whatever we're doing, if we're paused or we're practicing and not playing or playing, just the positive vibe has been trickled down from those upperclassmen down. And it's been easy for us because they've been able to manage the group, very well. So I think our job is to make sure we stay in some constant contact with guys. When we were paused, if we weren't able to see anyone, to make sure we continue to try to coach them through video and give them a dose of some different things just to keep their mind fresh and their focus on hockey.
How about things with the practice situation, given all the pauses?
We've had a lot of pauses, so anytime the guys can get on the ice, they're really excited. Like, we were on the ice for 45 minutes today. Last week, the day before we went on the road, we were on the ice for 30 minutes and 45 minutes. It's as much as we want to practice, we want to keep it short, because it's been a mental grind, and we haven't had a lot of bodies. We've had just enough guys to play over the last few weekends, so we haven't had a lot of guys maybe not playing or resting. So guys have played a lot of minutes, so we got to be very cognizant of their energy levels. So practice is super important, but we haven't had too much of it. But when we've had it, we've made it hard and short.
Well, maybe that's a glass half full situation. You haven't had practice burnout that other teams have had, and a lot of excitement to get out there.
Yeah, you could say that for sure. I think at least off the start, conditioning wise, it was very evident that teams were playing a lot and that we weren't. But as of right now, I think our guys are in, pretty well conditioned, and they're in a good spot to hopefully, continue to do well.
Your opponent this week, the University of Connecticut, they last weekend were ranked in the USCHO and USA Today polls for the first time ever. They've had a couple of losses and slipped out of there. When you look at them, what do you see? And obviously, I always ask coaches about this when they're playing an opponent that's coming off a couple of losses. Are you expecting to face a very hungry team this weekend?
UConn's always really difficult to play versus. Every time we play them, They always seem very hungry. And yeah, no, if you come off a loss, obviously you've got their attention, right? So they're, but yeah, looking at them, they've got a really good team at all three positions. Their decor is mobile, tough. They've got some size. They've got some skill. Their goalie is arguably the best goalie in the league. If you look at it, from the what he can do day in, day out, he can individually steal a game. And then up front, they're dangerous. They've got multiple weapons. They've got some size, a lot of big guys to deal with, but they've got some other guys who can really skate. And they're hard. They play really hard in the D zone. They've got some physicality. They're good through the neutral zone. And it looks like they're growing as a team. And you just look at the teams that they've played this year. They haven't had an easy run at it. They've played multiple teams multiple times who are very good hockey teams, and they've done well. So it's going to be a really tough test.
You mentioned it. You've had some high-end players out. You've had a hard time putting a lineup together every weekend. How's the health right now? Are you getting anybody back? Do you feel like are you getting closer to being a healthy team as we get down the stretch of the season?
We're getting there. We haven't seen Amonte since game 2, so he's out for the year. Phillips, we haven't seen for months, so, and then some of the other guys will trickle in. I think it's a crazy year, and I'm hoping that we're going to have more guys, but I can't say that we are, at least for this weekend.
Well, it's always a tough situation, injuries, and then you throw COVID on top of it this season. It has been a strange year nonetheless, but your team 8-2, right there in the Hockey East Power Index, right behind Boston College, very close to first place right now. So best of luck this weekend. It's great catching up with you, and we hopefully will have another chance to catch up as this season winds down and we're talking postseason.
Okay, guys, I appreciate it.
That's BU's Albie O'Connell. More of the Game of the Week podcast in a moment.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
This is the Game of the Week podcast from USCHO.com. Jim, let's talk about that BU-UConn matchup. Albie O'Connell said that UConn is always a tough competitor for them. UConn just slipped out of the poll this week after a weekend sweep, but that's a pretty good Huskies team.
It is, and I had a chance to see them last, I think it was Tuesday, and a loss to Lowell, and they played well in that game. They didn't generate a ton of offense, but the offense they generated was excellent. And that seems to always be kind of the thing I think about UConn is they get some high quality chances every game. And then Tomas Vomachka on the back end is one of the best goaltenders. You heard Albie O'Connell say, he says in the league, certainly in the country too. He'll be a Richter candidate, probably a Richter finalist when everything is said and done. They have a lot of great components, but here's Boston University. They've gone through a lot of issues. Slow start to their season. They were the 51st out of 51 teams to get their season off the ground. A pause once they got started. They hadn't had a lot of practice time. They've had injuries, and they've had players with COVID cases. All of that thrown in. I know that there's not a lot of teams that are totally immune to this, but you're in game number 11 and the season's almost over. They have found a way to piece together a season nicely here and played some good teams in there. They swept UMass. They split with Boston College. They split with Providence. They've taken care of business in other games, especially that Vermont series last weekend where they, banged up with guys missing from the lineup, had to go on the road. So I look at the way that they're playing. It's really impressive to me. And, I've seen people say that they should be in the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the poll. And I've seen people say, how do you even rank a team that's only played 10 games at this point? I think that they are a better team than anybody expects. This is a great heavyweight tilt because UConn's going to be hungry. This is a good series this weekend.
When we looked at the NCHC, this was planned as a bye week to be able to make up some games. One of those matchups has a pair of games, number 9 Omaha at number 2 North Dakota. This is the third and fourth of 6 games between them, I think it is, on the way down the stretch. There were some pretty good battles earlier, and I'm sure tempers and emotions will be high right from the drop of the puck.
These two teams split a series a few weeks back. We actually had that as our game of the week at that time. And the one thing I remember from that series and watching that one was just, almost from the first period, first 5 minutes of the first period, it was a gritty game. And, you have two teams that know that they're having good seasons. They're both battling for position in the standings. For Omaha, this is kind of one of those weekends that you can do a lot if you were to have come out with two victories. It means a ton. Now, you're going to be on the road in a tough place to play, Ralph Engelstad Arena. They have some fans in there right now, so it's a tougher environment. But still, I look at this as a big opportunity for Omaha. If you're North Dakota, you're trying to really start to think about sealing the deal and win the trophy, the championship trophy in the NCHC regular season. Your lead is not big, but you only really have 6 games left in the regular season. A lot of them against Omaha, as you said. There's still 2 more to go after this, but and I guess that's it. It's only 4 games maybe that North Dakota has left, but still, it is one of those weekends that you look at it and you say, if we come away with 6 points this weekend, regardless of what happens around us, we're probably in a really good position in the NCHC standings.
Or even 5 points should it go to overtime. And it could be that close between those two teams. Also getting some makeup games this weekend, Colorado College. They're at number 8, Minnesota Duluth on Thursday, and number 6, St. Cloud on Saturday. Those are big games for the home teams, especially Minnesota Duluth, after getting really manhandled a bit on the scoreboard, 4-1 and 4-0 at Western Michigan last weekend.
Yeah, I think that this is the game that you have to kind of circle and say, guys, let's get the railroad train back on the tracks. And not that this Duluth team is bad, not that they're struggling, but the last week's series at this point in the season is one that, if you're Scott Sandelin, you're shaking your head and saying, okay, what are we going to do right here? What are we going to do better? And I think that that's kind of the approach you have to take into Thursday. Single game, find a way, you're at home, get the victory. But we know that Colorado College has played a lot of teams very tough throughout this season at different times. Mike Havlin always has his team ready to go. They have some skill on that team. And when they play their game and when they get good goaltending, they're a very tough team to beat.
In the ECAC, everybody's off for the weekend, although Quinnipiac has picked up a game with LIU. It seems like the Sharks are always out there available for a game. But let's turn to the Big Ten. 3 matchups on the schedule this weekend. Number 7, Michigan at Ohio State. Michigan State travels to number 4, Minnesota. And number 5, Wisconsin hosts Notre Dame for a pair.
Yeah, all of these series, despite the fact that they're not pitting 2 nationally ranked teams against each other, are very important for the teams that aren't ranked. It's for position, to find some position in that Big Ten tournament. In concept, the higher you can get in the standings, the better opportunity you have in that first round game. But for teams like Michigan and Wisconsin, if you're going to catch Minnesota, you've got to win when they win, and then try to find ways to get maybe a sweep when they split or something like that. But Minnesota's starting to put itself in a pretty decent position here in the standings, and I think that this is one of those weekends. If you're the chasing team, you don't have a lot of room for error because there's not a lot of games left. Minnesota has the lead in the standings, and they should be able to take care of business with Michigan State. But again, you just never know. All 3 of these opponents, Ohio State, Michigan State, Notre Dame, I feel like they're some of the more unpredictable teams, I should say, in the Big Ten.
When we look at Atlantic hockey, a pretty full slate of games. Everybody will have games, at least some Thursday through Saturday games. One of those on the docket is number 19, Robert Morris at RIT. Robert Morris has had a couple of weeks of a pause. RIT had a bunch of its schedule postponed during January. RIT has had 3 losses in a row, Robert Morris coming off the break. These games are very important for both teams in postseason standings, and for Robert Morris, maybe to even claim an at-large bid.
I think so. If you're going to try to make a case for an at-large bid, you can't be losing some games late in the season that you really should win. But it's difficult. They'll be 16 days off by the time that they get back on the ice on Saturday at RIT, and that's tough. Those pauses, we've seen it all through this season. It's affected different teams in different ways. So I think for Robert Morris, you just got to hope that you have a decent team to field. I know that they had some COVID cases going through their team, so even knowing who's available for them is going to be difficult. And you're playing a really tough team that's always good at home in RIT. So it does feel like one of those series that if you're going to be that team that gets the kind of the at-large bid, maybe the upset at-large bid that not a lot of people are expecting, you got to win these games down the stretch.
Finally, in the WCHA, a Tuesday game, two teams that have flown under the radar quite a bit, but have quietly put together some pretty good seasons. Number 20, Lake Superior, is at number 18, Michigan Tech.
We mentioned this back on Monday, especially talking about Michigan Tech. For some reason, they fell off my radar. Lake State has gotten on and off throughout the season. And I was talking with somebody yesterday, and they said, oh, no, they're pretty soft. That's not a team that I think of as a top 20 team. I said, look at their record and look at who they've played. They've beat some pretty good teams. So that is a good matchup. And in terms of make or break, probably a single game doesn't go that far. But, both of these teams are performing maybe a little higher than a level that I expected them to. So if you can pull off, throw a win in there, they've got some different games, different opponents earlier in the weekend. That's a Tuesday game. They've got some different opponents this weekend. You never know. You start moving up those standings, and second place in the WCHA is going to get a lot of consideration when it comes to the NCAA tournament at large bids.
And not to dismiss anybody from being in the top 20, but we do have to remember that with 10 teams not playing this season, 2 or 3 teams of those 10 would probably be in the top 20, displacing some others. So it's been interesting to see who comes in and out of the top 20 really from 15 or 16 on down.
I forget that sometimes. That slips my mind, I can tell you. It is something you really have to keep in mind. You'd likely have Cornell in there. You might have Harvard in there. There's probably another team that's not playing that in the ECAC that might be in there as well. So you're right about that. But at the same time, I look at the teams that are at the bottom. They've been given opportunities. We had UConn first time they were ever nationally ranked last weekend. That's a good statement for them. But I don't know what we're going to get in terms of NCAA selections. And let's face it, anybody that's 17 through 20 probably wouldn't get into the tournament anyways unless they get in on an auto bid. But I think it has been interesting to watch the poll evolve and some new teams that we don't talk about a lot getting some longer stays in the poll.
Well, that'll do it for this week's Game of the Week podcast. Lots of great action out there, although in some leagues a bit of a light schedule. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.